Where is New Zealand on the map? Close your eyes. Picture it. Which side of Australia? Northwest, northeast, southeast? How many people were in the car when Kennedy was shot? What did Darth Vader say to Luke? Luke, I am your father? Or no, I am your father? If you answered any of these confidently, you might be remembering a world that no longer exists. Millions of people give the same answers, and every single one contradicts recorded history, according to this reality. But what if they're not wrong? What if they're remembering a different version of the world, a version that used to exist but doesn't anymore? Tonight, you'll hear new evidence from 2026 that we are not living in the original reality, that at some point, without warning, we shifted into a copy, and our memories aren't faulty, they're echoes of the world we left behind. By the end of this video, you won't be sure which version of reality you woke up in today. Let's begin. A geography teacher in her early 60s has been teaching for 40 years. She knows maps. She's drawn borders, pointed at countries, explained continents thousands of times. In 2023, she opened an atlas and didn't recognize it. New Zealand was in the wrong place. For her entire career, she taught that New Zealand was northwest of Australia. She could draw it from memory. Northwest. Always northwest. Now it's southeast, far southeast, completely different location. She thought it was a misprint. Checked another atlas, same position. Checked online maps, same position. Pulled out her old teaching materials from the 1990s, same position. New Zealand is southeast of Australia in every map, in every book, in every archive. Always has been. Except she remembers 40 years of teaching it differently. Thousands of lessons, thousands of students pointing to the wrong spot for decades. She went online and found thousands of other teachers saying the exact same thing, same memory, same shock. New Zealand moved. Not one confused person, thousands, all remembering the same incorrect location. Geography doesn't change, continents don't move in a single lifetime, but memory does, or so they say. So why do thousands of educated professionals remember the same wrong map? How does an entire generation of teachers collectively misremember where a country is? Unless they're not misremembering, unless they're remembering correctly, just from a different version of the map. But geographic confusion can be explained away as poor education or misinterpreted maps. When cultural memory shifts, when words you've heard 1,000 times suddenly never existed, it becomes impossible to ignore. A woman in her late 50s has watched Star Wars her entire life. She can quote the original trilogy by heart. She's seen The Empire Strikes Back at least 30 times. She knows what Darth Vader says to Luke when he reveals the truth. Everyone knows. It's one of the most quoted lines in cinema history.
Luke, I am your father. She said it. Her friends have said it. Comedians, TV shows, memes, merchandise, parodies, everyone uses that line. For 40 years, that's been the quote. In 2025, she rewatched the movie. The scene came on. Darth Vader spoke. No, I am your father. Not Luke, just no. She rewound it, listened again. No, I am your father. She checked every version. Theatrical release, digitally remastered, special editions, fan edits, subtitles, scripts. In every single version, the line is, no, I am your father. Always has been. She went online. Millions of people remember Luke, I am your father. Millions. It's not a fringe memory, it's mainstream. People have tattoos of the wrong quote, posters, t-shirts, entire comedy sketches built around a line that was never spoken. How do millions of people misremember the exact same line in the exact same way? How does a collective false memory become more famous than the actual dialogue? Unless it wasn't false. Unless, in another version of reality, in the world these people came from, that's exactly what Vader said. The phenomenon has a name because of one specific case, a case so widespread, so consistent, it defined the entire effect. Thousands of people remember Nelson Mandela dying in prison in the 1980s. They remember news coverage, funeral footage, tributes, mourning. His death in captivity became a symbol of the anti-apartheid struggle's tragedy. They remember exactly where they were when they heard. They remember conversations about it. They remember the sadness, the injustice, the way it affected them. Except Nelson Mandela didn't die in prison. He was released in 1990. He became president of South Africa. He lived until 2013. He died at age 95, free and celebrated. But thousands of people have memories of his funeral in the 80s. Detailed memories, specific memories, memories that never happened, according to this timeline. This case was so common, so widely reported, that the entire phenomenon was named after it, the Mandela Effect. One person misremembering is memory failure. Thousands misremembering the same specific detail in the same specific way is a pattern, and the pattern doesn't stop there. When details shift, you can question memory, but when major geographic facts change, when entire landmarks move, the explanation becomes harder to accept. A man in his early 60s visited the Statue of Liberty twice in his life, once as a teenager in the 1970s, once in the 1990s with his children. He remembers clearly the statue is on Ellis Island, the same island where immigrants were processed. That's why it was so symbolic, liberty welcoming the tired, the poor, right there on Ellis Island where millions arrived. He remembered taking the ferry to Ellis Island, getting off, walking to the statue. It was all one visit, one island. In 2025, planning another trip, he looked up ferry schedules. Ellis Island and Liberty Island, two different islands, two different ferries. He thought it was a mistake. Checked official sources. The Statue of Liberty has always been on Liberty Island. Ellis Island is nearby, but separate. Always has been, since 1886. He found his old photos. He's standing in front of the statue. The caption in his handwriting, Ellis Island, 1978.
But every historian, every archive, every map says the statue was never on Ellis Island. It's always been on Liberty Island. He's not alone. Hundreds of people remember the statue being on Ellis Island. They remember it the same way he does. One island, one visit, the symbolism of liberty and immigration in the same location. Geography doesn't lie. Islands don't move, but memory does. Except when thousands share the same wrong memory, it stops being individual error and starts being something else. A graphic designer in his early 50s worked with major brands for 3 decades. One of his projects in the 1990s involved Fruit of the Loom, the clothing company. He remembers the logo, fruit spilling out of a brown woven cornucopia basket. The basket was distinctive. He sketched it for design studies. In 2024, he looked up the logo for reference. No cornucopia, just fruit. He checked the company's history. No cornucopia, ever. The logo has always been fruit only. He went to his archive and found his original sketches. The cornucopia was there. Thousands of people remember the basket. Designers, artists, people who wore the brand as kids. They drew it from memory, and their drawings match, but the company insists it never existed. Every archive, every vintage ad, every old shirt shows fruit only, no basket, never was. How do thousands of people independently remember a design element that provably never existed? How does a collective hallucination form with such specific, consistent detail? Or maybe it did exist,
just not in this version of the brand, not in this version of the world. When historical events shift, when the facts of major moments change, it cuts to the core of what we think we know. A historian in his mid-60s has studied the Kennedy assassination for decades. He's read every report, watched every film, interviewed witnesses. He knows there were 4 people in the car: President Kennedy, Jackie Kennedy, the driver, and 1 Secret Service agent in front. 4 people. He's absolutely certain. Except every photograph shows 6 people. Every witness testimony describes 6. Every official report lists 6. Governor Connolly and his wife were in the middle row, always were. The car had 3 rows, 6 occupants. That's why the bullet trajectory debates exist, because of the seating arrangement with 6 people. But he remembers 4. And when he went online, he found thousands of others who remember 4 as well. They're shocked to see Connolly in the photos, shocked to learn he was even there. They don't remember that version. This isn't forgetting a minor detail. This is remembering a completely different arrangement of a world historical event. 4 people or 6? One memory says 4. Every record says 6. Which one is real?
Here's where it gets truly unsettling, because the examples aren't slowing down, they're accelerating. A researcher has been tracking reported Mandela Effect cases since 2020. The numbers tell a story. 2020, 300 documented cases. 2023, 1,200 cases. 2025, over 5,000 new examples. 2026, new cases reported every single week. The growth is exponential. Either mass delusion is spreading faster than any known psychological phenomenon, or something about reality itself is destabilizing. And there's another phenomenon that exploded after 2020, reality shifting. Millions of people, mostly younger generations, practice techniques to consciously move their awareness into alternate realities. They call it shifting to your desired reality. Online communities have millions of members, detailed guides, testimonials, claimed successes. People say they've shifted to parallel worlds where small details differ, where they made different choices, where outcomes changed. What if some people are shifting without realizing it? What if the Mandela Effect isn't memory failure, but accidental displacement into nearby parallel realities? Realities so similar to the original that most things are identical: your life, your relationships, your home, but small inconsistencies remain. A country in a different spot, a quote with different words, a logo with a missing element. You wouldn't notice the shift. The world looks the same, feels the same. You're still you, but tiny details are off, and your memory holds echoes of the world you left behind. Until the new reality solidifies, until your brain reconciles the conflict, until you forget you ever lived anywhere else. So here's what we know. Millions of people remember the world differently, not vague impressions, specific, consistent, detailed memories, geography, history, quotes, logos, events. And the number of discrepancies is increasing. New examples appear constantly. The acceleration is undeniable.
You can explain individual cases as faulty memory, pattern recognition errors, brains filling gaps incorrectly. But when millions share the same error, when educated professionals contradict their own fields of expertise, when entire communities remember things that provably never happened in this recorded timeline, the standard explanations fall apart. Maybe we're experiencing mass false memory syndrome on an unprecedented scale. Maybe human memory is far less reliable than we thought. Or maybe we're living in a copy, one of infinite parallel versions, and our memories are residual data from the previous timeline we occupied before we slipped unnoticed into this one. Quantum physics says all realities exist simultaneously. Your consciousness navigates between them,
choosing which to observe, which to inhabit, and if it chose once, it can choose again. You might shift tonight, wake up tomorrow in a world where one more detail is different, one more landmark moved, one more quote changed, and you'll barely notice because everything else stayed the same. Almost everything. What do you remember differently? Where was New Zealand for you? Where was the Statue of Liberty? How many people in Kennedy's car? What did Vader say? Write it in the comments. Share your discrepancies, because if enough of us remember the same wrong details, maybe they're not wrong. Maybe they're proof we came from somewhere else, evidence that we're not in the original timeline, that we shifted, collectively or individually, into a neighboring reality so similar we barely notice the seams. Pay attention to the small things that feel wrong, the details that don't match your memory. They might not be mistakes. They might be clues that you're not in the world you think you are, that you've been living in a copy all along and never knew it. Until now. Thank you for watching, and remember, if reality changed once without you noticing, it can change again tonight.